Referred to me as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil, astrogloss.
Dean Deal is not the kind of man who minces words. When Diddy's former right-hand bodyguard sits down in that chair, jaw set and eyes locked on the camera, we can feel it. Something enormous is about to break loose. We watch him exhale, lean forward, and without a trace of irony or apology, say the words that could reshape the public image of a dozen megastars in one sharp exhale. Diddy's parties weren't just wild. According to Deal, they were contagious. And not in the metaphorical sense. We're talking about a secret, a true power player nightmare, a whispered Hollywood infection that, if exposed, could snap entire careers like cheap plastic.
He was responsible for Diddy's day-to-day life, so he is able to provide a lot of information about what that life was like. He goes into detail on extensive use.
It's the kind of claim that makes even the seasoned gossip crowd pause mid-scroll. According to Deal, there was a sickness going around at these infamous after-dark bacchanals, and the cause wasn't the open bar or the mystery punch. It was the man at the center of it all, Diddy himself. If you were in the right room on the wrong night, maybe you left with more than just a headache and a hangover. Maybe you left with a new secret, one you'd pay almost anything to keep buried. The reaction from industry insiders? Utter, airtight silence. It's like every major publicist and crisis comms expert got the same midnight phone call. Don't say a word. No angry statements, no lawsuits, no hashtags, just an eerie quiet from people who are usually first to clap back. Why? Because, as Deal alleges, too many of the faces we grew up watching, the faces that sold out arenas, charted #1s, inked multi-million-dollar endorsement deals, were not just guests at Diddy's legendary parties. They were participants. They were potential casualties of what Deal calls a sinister secret that's been buried deep in Hollywood's glittering facade. So we have to ask, who's on the guest list? We're not talking about some shadowy C-listers from cable reality. Diddy's bashes drew everyone: superstars, producers, socialites, athletes, up-and-coming hopefuls. Names like Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, Steve Harvey, Lil' Kim, and a fresh-faced Usher sent to New York in the mid-90s on a mission to get a little edge. Back then, these parties were whispered about for their extravagance, not their risk of infectious scandal. But with Deal's bombshell, every old party photo starts to look less like a harmless flashback and more like Exhibit A in an industry-wide cover-up.
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge, iconic, TV star or movie star, and you're in some...
Whispers of a so-called STD blacklist began swirling almost immediately after Deal's claims hit the airwaves. The idea is simple, but chilling. A literal list cataloging everyone who caught something at Diddy's parties, passed between Hollywood's top brass like some high-stakes game of keep away. The blacklist, insiders claim, isn't just a warning, it's leverage. The unspoken threat? Play ball, stay silent, and your secret is safe. Step out of line, cross the wrong mogul, and your private shame might suddenly stop being private. One former road manager who claims he was in the room for more than one phone call tells us that list has ended more deals than bad streaming numbers ever could. No label confirmation, naturally, but the paranoia is real. Suddenly, those inexplicable disappearances from the charts, the sudden shelving of albums, the actors who go from everywhere to nowhere, they all start to look like more than just bad luck. And the parties themselves? They've become legend for all the wrong reasons. If you believe the lawsuits and the off-record confessions, Diddy's homes were like adult wonderlands, overflowing with forbidden fruit, where anyone could get swept up in the music, the ego, the ever-present sense of invincibility. The higher your profile, the greater the risk. One minor R&B star, whose career flatlined after a brief run of hits, tells friends that Diddy warned her never to talk about what really happened in Miami. No one's ever gone on record. Of course, if the blacklist is real, the threat is just too great. But it's not just the older crowd, the seasoned hustlers and party-hardened moguls. That's where things get even darker. Enter Usher, a minor really when he landed in Diddy's orbit. Usher's own words, resurfacing now in the wake of new raids and lawsuits, paint a picture that's both thrilling and terrifying. He says he was about 14 or 15 when he got shipped off to live with Diddy in New York. The Face Records wanted their newest act to lose the pretty label, so they handed him over to the wildest man in the music business, knowing full well they were sending a teenager into an environment described even by grown men as crazy and wild.
And he was scooped up, and suddenly he was a part of people like Diddy going after him and saying, hey man, why don't you pick up my phone calls? There's actually a video of that. Diddy And Justin Bieber looks to be like 15 years old and said, why aren't you picking up my phone calls? And he's like, oh, I know you were trying to contact me through people and I don't have your number. And the next thing we know, Justin is at Diddy's parties.
Usher himself, speaking to Howard Stern, tried to downplay the rumors, but his words only deepened the mystery. I got a chance to see some things. I went there to see the lifestyle, and I saw it. I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. There's something chilling about that, being too young to even process what's happening around you in a place where boundaries get erased by fame, power, and the absence of any real adult oversight. Usher wasn't there for the after-hours fun. He was supposed to be learning how to become a star. Instead, he found himself dropped into a world where the rules didn't just bend, they vanished entirely. And when Stern pressed him on whether women at these parties ever tried to approach him, Usher hesitated, then answered, "There were very curious things taking place, and I didn't necessarily understand it." His focus, he insisted, was always the music. Yet when the conversation turned to whether he'd ever let his own kids spend a year at Puffy Camp, the answer came fast and unequivocal. Hell no. That's a level of honesty that's hard to spin. The subtext? He knows things went down at those parties that no parent would want their child exposed to, no matter how big the dream.
A lot of times you would have him with a younger female. There's a power dynamic there. A more impressionable girl is easier to reel in. Consent is between the people that are engaging, and I wasn't there in these situations to understand the consent.
But Usher wasn't the only one there, not by a long shot. Diddy's party circuit drew a constellation of stars, from Prince Harry, name-dropped in lawsuits as a token of legitimacy, to the likes of Cuba Gooding Jr., now tangled in accusations involving far more than just being an enthusiastic guest. Even Steve Harvey's name pops up in connection to these infamous gatherings, though mostly for photo ops and networking, at least publicly. For every celebrity who plays it off as a joke or a misunderstanding, there are 3 more who duck the topic entirely, and we can't ignore the timing. The federal raids, the mounting lawsuits, the sudden parade of old interviews surfacing online. If there was ever a coordinated industry effort to control the narrative, this is it. Everyone from Young Miami to Will Smith is being forced to address the Diddy connection. Silmith, caught between songs at a recent concert, flat out denied having anything to do with Puffy and couldn't resist poking fun at the infamous baby oil found during the LA and Miami raids. The message: I'm not involved, and don't even try to tie my name to that circus. But it's never that simple, is it? When the accusations start flying and the FBI is raiding your mansions, everyone in the entertainment business starts asking uncomfortable questions. Why did so many young artists and rising stars pass through Diddy's world only to crash and burn, or vanish, soon after? What's really being protected here, and at what cost? And if there really is a blacklist, who holds it and who's on it? Because Beale's story, no matter how wild it sounds, lands differently in 2025 than it would have just a few years ago. There's blood in the water, and for the first time in decades, the sharks might not be on Diddy's payroll.
How many people came through his orbit? How many people could this have happened to? And how did he get away with it for so long?
So what about all those sudden career nosedives? The models who lost their contracts, the backup singers who went from opening acts to Instagram ghosts overnight, the actors who once had the world at their feet, only to slip off the map right after a notorious party weekend. Some industry veterans insist that's just how show business works. One wrong move, one unlucky night, and the doors close forever. But if Deal is right, maybe the consequences were far more literal than anyone realized. Maybe it wasn't just bad business or bad behavior that derailed these lives. It was the fallout from a secret nobody dares to speak, enforced by a piece of paper nobody admits to seeing. We're left combing through every old tabloid photo, every blurry Instagram story from the mansion in the hills, every breathless mention of a wild night at Diddy's place. Who was in the background, just out of frame? Who's keeping their head down today, hoping their name never gets attached to the wrong list, because once you've been to a party like that, you can never really leave it behind. The silence isn't just self-protection, it's survival. And it's not lost on us that even now, with headlines screaming, lawyers circling, and social media ablaze, the real guest list stays a closely guarded secret. A few brave voices, usually the ones with nothing left to lose, drop hints, but the A-listers, they have everything to lose. For now, the machine keeps humming, the lawsuits stack up, and the public keeps guessing. We wait, watching for someone, anyone, to break ranks and confirm what Deal insists everyone in the industry already knows.
Interestingly, we haven't seen the indictments yet. There's been some time lag. I suppose it will take some time to go through all the forensic, evidence.
Federal raids rarely have subtlety, but the image of armed Homeland Security agents swarming Diddy's Miami and LA homes, that's a tableau worthy of its own chapter in Hollywood's Book of Downfalls. We watch the footage. Helicopters overhead, doors smashed open, agents in tactical vests carrying out boxes of who knows what, Neighbors whisper about seeing stacks of electronics, hard drives, and suitcases carted out before anyone inside had a chance to even reach for their phone. For the first time, the noose is tightening around Diddy's empire in real time, not just in the court of public opinion, but with the weight of the federal government behind it.
The feds, Al Capone style, have not charged everything under the sun. They've charged 3 main charges: racketeering, trafficking, and the transport of a prostitute. And I'll tell you, I don't know about the racketeering charge. It's pretty sweeping, and I'll tell you what the general elements are.
What are the feds really looking for? Officially, it's part of a sweeping investigation into trafficking and illicit substances with layers that run deeper than the marble floors and infinity pools of Diddy's real estate portfolio. But industry sources hint that it's the parties themselves, those exclusive glitter-dusted affairs with velvet rope guest lists that may hold the connective tissue between all these lawsuits, rumors, and now, evidence. There are murmurs of encrypted messages, hidden cameras, and storage rooms filled with party favors that aren't exactly the kind you'd find at a kid's birthday bash. Even more chilling is the suggestion from a veteran publicist who claims, if they find just one list, one hard drive, this whole story goes nuclear, and it won't just be Diddy answering questions. That's the real turning point. For years, stories of Hollywood's wildest nights have been dismissed as exaggeration, punchlines, or just the price of admission for fame. But now, with the Department of Homeland Security dragging evidence out by the armful, the old dismissals don't hold up. If prosecutors link what was happening in those sprawling mansions to actual crimes, exploitation, trafficking, the illicit distribution of party substances, then suddenly the scandal could shake the music industry to its core. Those casual invitations to a bad boy bash might end up being subpoenas, and the phrase "seen at Diddy's party" could turn into the most damaging line on a resume.
It's complicated. There are 8 criminal elements. The jurors only have to prove that 2 of them, or feel that 2 of them have been proven, in order for him to be found guilty on that racketeering conspiracy, as well as believing that Combs led a criminal enterprise for his sexual desire.
And if there's a paper trail, we're not just talking about RSVP lists. There are stories circulating about ND as signed in haste, cameras placed in bedrooms, and a now notorious black book so dangerous that several high-powered attorneys reportedly refused to even view a copy when approached by potential whistleblowers. Imagine a scenario where this so-called STD blacklist, or as it's called in some circles, the leverage file, falls into the hands of law enforcement, or worse for the stars involved, the press. A scenario where careers, marriages, and million-dollar contracts are upended overnight because someone wanted to party with the king of excess. But the parties were only the tip of the iceberg. As details emerge about what insiders are now calling the Puffy Camp grooming pipeline, a much darker picture begins to form. This wasn't just a place for grown-up celebrities to cut loose. Instead, we see the machinery that sent impressionable teenagers and young hopefuls straight into the heart of Diddy's world. Industry power brokers like L.A. Reid openly admit to handing Usher off to Diddy, not for musical training in the traditional sense, but to absorb swagger and flavor. Translation, a fast-track course in the kind of street credibility that polite Atlanta labels couldn't manufacture, even if it meant skipping right past the guardrails. For Usher, the experience was a fever dream, flying between New York, LA, and Miami, surrounded by the music world's biggest names, but also by excesses that most teens couldn't begin to process. He described the scene as crazy and wild, admitting, "There were very curious things taking place, and I didn't necessarily understand it." The question lingers in every corner of the industry now. How many others went through that same pipeline? How many rising stars were given to Diddy with a handshake and a wink, all so they could become edgier? And at what personal cost?
So this is getting very interesting. And what has come on the heels of this is people unearthing videos of Justin Bieber at Diddy parties. Now, Justin Bieber was obviously extremely young when he entered the industry, extremely innocent when he entered the industry, an industry that he did not quite understand as a boy who just knew how to sing and play the guitar and just did both of those things on YouTube.
We have to wonder, where was the oversight? Who was supposed to be looking out for these kids? The labels sent them in, the managers signed off, and Diddy promised fame in exchange for experiencing the lifestyle. But no one seems to have asked what that lifestyle actually entailed. Was the camp a breeding ground for exploitation, thinly disguised as mentorship? If so, who holds the blame? The mogul who hosted, or the machine that delivered fresh faces to his doorstep and turned a blind eye to what came next? The true horror is how normalized it all became. When Usher says, hell no, he wouldn't send his own children to a Diddy-style mentorship, it's a rare moment of clarity in an industry built on denial. But for every Usher, how many more stayed silent, whether out of fear, loyalty, or a simple desire to protect their own futures? A former producer who attended several parties in the late 90s claims the unspoken rule was you don't talk about Puffy Camp, ever. If you did, you'd be off the guest list, and maybe a lot worse. Now, as federal agents pick through the wreckage of Diddy's empire, old alliances are splintering. Names once considered untouchable are suddenly in the crosshairs, forced to deny, deflect, or simply disappear from view. Young Miami, previously a fixture at Diddy's side, now keeps her distance and insists, that wasn't my experience. Will Smith, never shy about his own controversies, has gone out of his way to make it clear, I didn't have anything to do with Puffy. So y'all can stop all those memes. Everyone is scrambling to put daylight between themselves and Diddy's world, hoping the shadows fall somewhere else.
And what I sensed from those public emotional breakdowns, and only public obviously because the press was following him, was that he was coming to terms with the fact that he had been engaged in darkness unwillingly. And Justin Bieber probably has a lot of shame about that. He probably feels shame first and foremost as a man,
But as lawsuits mount, settlements get hammered out behind closed doors, and federal investigations creep ever closer, we're left with more questions than answers. Is this truly just the beginning? What happens if someone leaks the blacklist, or if a forgotten hard drive shows up in discovery? What if those who were silenced by fear, contracts, or payoffs decide that now is the moment to tell their side of the story? The possibility alone has agents, attorneys, and executives burning the midnight oil, praying that the next morning's headlines aren't the ones that end their careers.
To not be involved with a famous singer, to not come out, here's the price. And that they're just selling to the individuals that are in those. This is what I heard. They're selling those videos. So if you're Tommy X, and Tommy X is a big, big movie star, and he was at some of the Diddy parties, he was in one of those bedrooms with 3 other men, and he's happily married to a woman, and blah. Tommy doesn't want that video to come out.
It all boils down to this. Diddy's empire was built on secrets, some glamorous, some shameful, and some that, if exposed, could unravel the very fabric of celebrity culture as we know it. If the worst allegations turn out to be true, if the dots connect the way Gene Deal insists they do, we may be looking at a scandal so explosive it drags not just Diddy, but an entire generation of Hollywood elite down into the mud. So what do you think? If the blacklist leaks, who gets taken down first, and how far will the industry go to protect its own? Let us know your wildest theories in the comments below. For now, we'll be keeping our eyes wide open and our distance from any invitations to party at the Knicks mansion in the hills. Stay scandal savvy, and until the next jaw-dropping reveal, this is where we leave you, wondering what secrets still lurk in the shadows.